Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Art Journaling with Ruthe Guerry, Creative Engagement Manager for Mother Community Initiatives. Ruth is an art therapist and practicing artist. She weaves her personal experience as an herbalist, meditator, and maker into programs that focus on whole person wellness. In this series, the last session of this series, to be exact, Ruth is going to share creative prompts and guide you through a variety of art making processes and techniques using supplies you can find around the house. And like I said, this is our final session in this series. And today, Ruth is going to be talking about Notan cutouts. But you don't need to have joined the first 3 sessions to participate today. So please join me in virtually welcoming Ruth.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It makes me sad that this is our last time together, but we're going to go out with a bang and have a lot of fun today. Hopefully have a lot of fun today, I think. We'll have a lot of fun today. So as Nicole said, in this series, we've just been kind of doing a quick overview of different types of art making, art journaling processes. The truth is, art journaling is something that you can do anywhere and can be anything. You don't have to have any experience. You don't have to be a writer or an artist. You can come as you are and have fun with this making process. So I'm going to talk for just a minute about what art journaling is, and then we'll jump into our prompt today. So art journaling, if you're joining for the first time, art journaling is a long recognized therapeutic practice. It's something that has a lot of benefits that we can get from this practice. So as an art therapist, I have used art journaling with clients, and I do art journaling on my own practice too. And I highly, highly, highly recommend it for sure. And hopefully if you have been here with us the last few weeks, you've been able to experience some of the wonderful benefits that come from this practice. Benefits like feeling more focused, feeling relaxed, de-stressing, centering, or just having a place to really express or encourage your creativity. Art journaling, like I said, has a lot of benefits. One of the things that I always try to focus on is process. I think in a lot of art making groups, you spend a lot of time focusing on your end goal and what you're going to be making and making it right, making it perfect. But I definitely believe that the process of making is the most important. And that's because that's where you get those benefits. By the act of making, by being present and focused on what's right in front of you, that's where you get to experience that increased focus, where you get to experience that relaxation, that centering. That's what's most important, I think. And so throughout this series with the different projects that we've done, whether it was the neurographic art or the collage or sticker making, or today we're going to be doing some Notan cutouts. Hopefully, as you've been doing some of these with us, you've been experiencing some of those benefits as well. One of the things that I do share in a lot of my groups, and I will probably say multiple times today, is that there's this really wonderful Japanese philosophy that I repeat to myself often because I need to hear it, and it's just a really great reminder. And maybe it can be helpful for you as well. But that phrase is wabi sabi. It's kind of a funny little phrase to say, but it focuses on finding beauty in the imperfection. And I think that's such a wonderful reminder for us that it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be done right. There's no correct way or wrong way to do it. It just has to be. And there's enjoyment that comes from the making, right? So you'll have some fun projects in the end with our process today. But the most important part, I think, is that making time that we get to have together. So as Nicole said, we're going to be doing some Notan cutouts. I'll be kind of talking just a tiny bit about the history behind that, and then we'll walk through some of that making together. And of course, I want to invite you to follow along and do as I do. You can make just what I'm making, or you can use it as a starting place to build off of. So whether you're making exactly what I'm doing or making your own version of it or doing something completely different, know that whatever you do is okay. And I just want to invite us to have some fun today in our last session together. So if we want to go ahead and spotlight my hands, I'm going to pull up, there we go, thank you. just some examples here of what a Notan cutout is. So Notan is a Japanese concept, and it really refers to balance, right? So the yin and yang, the positive and negative space. It's kind of placing an equal emphasis on both parts. Typically in art making or in life, we focus on the positive image, the positive spaces. But the truth is those negative spaces in art is just as important as those positive spaces. And so what do I mean by that? So I've got a couple images here that are some quick examples of what Notan cutout might be. So this first one, you can see it's just a regular piece of paper, and I've cut out a shape. I've cut out half a turtle. So when I flip over the piece, I have a full turtle, right? So this is the positive space right here in the image. And then around here is that negative space, right? And so we can see that that negative space helps create that positive space, and each space is just as important. So it can be something that is like detailed. This turtle is a little detailed, right? It can be something that's a little more basic, like this butterfly cutout. So you can see I cut out a butterfly. I cut out half a butterfly. So when I flip over that positive space and put it next to my image here, I get a complete butterfly. Okay, so you can do those basic shapes, but we can also get somewhat complex with it and do something more detailed. And so here's an example of that. Again, it's one piece that I can cut, and when I flip over, we've got the positive and negative spaces creating some really nice images. One of the things I love about this process is that it forces us to kind of slow down a little bit. And that's because we're having to think kind of backwards almost. We're thinking about the positive and the negative spaces in our image here. And so just as a last one, you can do something that's super basic, like a triangle. And it's all about cutting out a space and flipping it over. So you can see, you can get some really complex images, and you can get some really kind of basic images as well. Now we have a handout that we'll put in the chat that has a little bit, just some templates, and I'll show an example of that right here. So these are just some templates to start with, but I'm going to be walking through just kind of how we can do these images. As a side note, before I move off from the screen, that the pieces in gray are the pieces that you're cutting out and flipping over, right? And so what that looks like, and I'm going to move these out of the way here. Let's actually get into it, I guess. So if you have a journal or a clean sheet of paper, definitely pull that aside. We're going to be using that today. So I'm going to open my journal up to a clean piece of paper. And I think I'm going to flip it over to, so I have two clean pieces of paper. And I'm going to use this as my background. So the main supplies that we need for today are going to be paper. And you can use any type of paper. If you have magazine pages, if you have construction paper like I have, or origami paper, copy paper, old artwork, scrapbooking paper, pattern paper, newspaper, any kind of paper, old mail. You can use all that to create these images. I'm going to be using origami paper and construction paper today, but know that anything you like, any paper is good to work with. All right. So our main supply is paper. We're also going to need some scissors and some adhesive. I'm going to be using a glue stick. I like using glue sticks because they dry quickly, but any adhesive will work. If you have tape, if you have tacky glue, Elmer's glue, Gorilla Glue, any type of glue, glue dots, any adhesive will work. I'm just going to be using the glue stick today. And then it's also helpful to have a pencil or a pen handy to help us draw out our template. Okay. So I'm going to start off today. I'm going to use a piece of origami paper because it's small and square. But if you don't have a piece of origami paper, know that that is completely okay. Any paper, like I said, any paper will work. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by doing a drawing. Now, when it comes to creating a drawing for a Notan cutout, you want to think about half an object. So like in my example here, let me pull this back up. So for my example here, for my turtle, I didn't draw a whole turtle. I cut the turtle right down the center and only drew half of him. So when I open him up, when I flip the other part over, I have a full image. So we're thinking in halves when we're creating our image. The same with the butterfly. I didn't draw a whole butterfly. I drew half, like one side of the butterfly. So when I cut that out and flip it around, I have a whole image, right? So if you're following along, if you have some paper with you, we'll follow along together. So I'm going to start off. I have, wish I had a pen. I think I have a pen. Yeah. A pen will be a little easier to see. So I have a pen here that I'm going to use. And so I'm going to focus. No, I just lost my glue stick. I'm sorry, everyone. Give me just a moment. There we go. Thank you. So what we're going to start off doing is drawing part of our image. So let's say I want to do a heart. So I've got my paper here. I want to do a heart shape, right? So this is what I want my final image to look like. But for my drawing that I'm going to cut out, I'm only going to draw half of it. So I'm only drawing this side of my heart, right? So I'm going to take it and just draw that one side. I'm not folding my paper. I'm literally just working on one side of the paper. So I'll take my pen here and do a little heart. Right? And so now when I go to cut that out, I'm going to take my paper here. Again, we're not folding anything. We're just cutting one side. So when I go to cut out this side, and I'm using a pen, so it's easy to see on camera, but if you're using a pencil, that works just as well. So I'm cutting that out. And what I'm going to do is take the piece that I cut out and flip it over. Okay. So that gives me a full heart shape. Now, with any shape that we do for our cutout, we want to think in halves. So just like I was saying here with the heart, we're focusing on the one side. That's the only side I'm drawing. We're focusing on half. So when we take that positive space, we open it up, it looks like a full heart, right? So there's lots of things that we can do. You can, just like my examples, you can do one side like this and cut it out. Or if you have a paper, like my origami paper here has 4 sides and it's kind of small, it'll fit in my journal. What I can do is start making cuts and shapes on all the sides. So it doesn't have to be just this one cutout here. We can do a lot of detail as well. And so when you start adding those other cutouts, you want to kind of think of back and forth, right? So what do I mean by that? So I cut out, this was my base paper. I cut that out and flipped it over, right? But if I want something going on in the middle here, I'm going to take my pen. Let's say I want a smaller heart that I want to cut out. So I'm going to go to my piece here and then just do a little heart drawing. Everyone can see. So I drew that mark on the center, right? So when I cut this out, and I'm just going to cut really quickly here. So I'm cutting out that center shape. Let me put it back on my image here. So I've got my image here. I cut out the positive space here. And so what I'll do is I'll flip it. So it's creating more details. Right. So that's 2 cuts that we did, and we're just kind of alternating, right? So with that first cut, I could flip the whole thing over the inside. So it gave me one solid heart. But then if I wanted to add more detail, I can make another cut and flip it. So I'm flipping it back and forth. And you can see there's a lot of detail that we can get from this process. What I like about this process, there are several things I like about this process, but one of them is that it kind of forces us to slow down because we're thinking in positive and negative spaces. And a process like this really encourages, it kind of exercises our brain, right? Because we're kind of thinking in a way we don't typically think, creating these positive and negative images, these images that have that kind of balance. Yeah. So this is just kind of our example, our starting place. So I want to encourage us to kind of fill up a paper today. So I'm going to set these aside. And I'm going to start with another piece of paper here. So I'm going to do again. Keep losing my glue stick. So I'm going to start off with a piece of paper here. And if you have your paper with you, I'm going to encourage you to go ahead and pull it out and think about some of the different shapes or images that maybe have meaning for you. One thing that I find really soothing is geometric shapes. And so that's what I'm going to start doing with mine. Maybe there's an image, maybe a butterfly or a turtle or, you know, something, there's an image of something that is meaningful to you. Think about how you can translate that in this process. Again, it's not, it doesn't have to be super complex, but it can be. But it can also be very basic shapes. So if you don't have an image that's coming to your mind right now or following along with the template, the handout, maybe start off doing some geometric shapes today. It can feel very soothing. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my paper here. And I see that my origami paper is just the right size to fit inside my journal. So I'm going to think about the different walls, the 4 walls that we have in our paper here. So if you have a rectangular paper or round paper, whatever size paper you have is good. So what I'm going to think about is making a drawing for each one of these sides, right? And so the drawing that I want to do here, this is where I'll start, and I'm calling it a drawing, but it's really just kind of some mark making that we're doing. I'm going to use my pen, so it'll be kind of easy to see. But what I'm going to start off doing is creating a mark, just a triangle. Now, everything that I want to flip down here, I'm going to make sure it stays in between these 2 corners, right? So what do I mean by that? Every drawing, every mark that I make is going to sit inside this triangle place specifically. And so each side that I each side that I'm cutting out, I'm going to make sure that it stays within this kind of imaginary triangle piece, right? So let's work with this one right here. And again, feel free to follow along with me and do as I'm doing, or kind of go your own way to use this as a starting out place. So I'm going to take my pen and I'm just going to create like a little zigzaggy mark here. I'm going to pick that up so we can see it a little easier. I've got a triangle and then a little squiggle. Okay. So what I'm going to do is cut out both of these images or these marks that I've made. So I'm going to take my scissors and just kind of cut it out. So I've got my paper here. And so when I flip this cutout, right, it's basically a mirror image, right? But I also did some squiggle in here, squiggle mark, that's a technical term for it. Just kidding. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out my little squiggle here. And again, this is not a process that we can do super quickly because we're having to pay attention to flipping each cutout. So it's something that does kind of take time. I love these art processes that do kind of slow us down a little bit. Especially when life gets so busy and chaotic. We need those moments of slow. Okay. So my piece, I cut out one of the sides, right? So what I can do is flip. Oh, let me do that more smoothly. So I cut out, I made my two cutouts. So I'm going to take my center one and flip it over. So now this gives me kind of almost a leaf-like shape, right? But it was just making two cuts and then taking that center cut and flipping it over. Yeah. And so once you find like, oh, this is good, I think I'm going to stop here, we can glue it down. But if you want to do some more marks, you want to cut out some more shapes and flip it, just kind of alternate those, flipping which side it's on, because we're wanting that balance, right? And so whatever is on this side, the mirror image is on the other. Okay? So that's a kind of what to keep in mind. I'm going to take my glue stick and just go ahead and glue down some of these just to keep them in place while we do some more. And then I'm going to glue down my piece here. You can see I'm just kind of lining up each of those points. So we've got this nice image. I'm not gluing down my big square, but by gluing down these little pieces, it helps me kind of pay attention to where I am and where I'm kind of moving, okay? So that's one side. So I'm going to start flipping around my square here and coming up with some different types of cuts. Again, this can be, because it's kind of a mark making and cutting, it's finding balance in our image here. It can be a very meditative process. So I'm going to turn my book just a little bit, my journal just a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and cut or make a mark, a little triangle. It doesn't have to be a triangle. I'm just kind of starting with that. And I'm just going to draw several triangles here. So I've drawn 3 different triangles. So what I'm going to do is start to cut them out. And again, you can do these more abstract shapes like I'm doing now, these geometric shapes, or if you're doing like my example, or the template shows doing something more figurative, more representational, that's good too. So I've got my first triangle piece cut. So I'm going to go ahead and make my next cut here. So I've got my image, my triangles. That first cut, I'm going to flip. So it gives me that kind of triangle space. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut out my next layer too. So you can get smaller and smaller, more detailed, right? And what we're doing is thinking about balance, right? Because whatever is on one side is going to be on the other side. It may be like a different color, right? So we have the background paper showing through here, but we have the construction paper showing through on this side. So you can get very detailed, going back and forth, creating these lovely shapes, or you can make it more simplified as well. There's nothing wrong with that. So if you're following along, if you're creating your cutouts here, I definitely want to encourage kind of playing around with it and seeing what you can do. I'm going to kind of glue down my pieces here and then talk about some different shapes that we can get from this process. But if there are any questions that are coming up as we're going along, please feel free to put it in the chat. It can be a really fun process, but it can also be a little complex too. So we want to make it as fun and enjoyable as we can, for sure. And like I said, this process can feel very meditative because you're taking these spaces, right? And you're just kind of flipping them back and forth. It's this basic repetitive motion, right? And anything that gets repetitive like that can be meditative. And there is something that does feel really soothing about creating balance, right? And as I said before, you know, this practice, this Notan cutout, all kind of revolves around this idea of balance, right? Whatever you have over here, you'll have over here. It's a good complement of each other. So I'm just kind of going in with different shapes, right? And I'm going to turn my journal around again, and I'm going to come to this other side. One of the things that I want to just kind of encourage us to keep in mind as we're doing this is we're flipping from one side. If you're doing a mark making that goes on two sides, so the square here has four sides. And if I do a mark making that goes to two different sides, not just the one side, but goes over to another side, it's harder to get that flip, right? This kind of mirrored image. And so when you are working with a piece of paper, try to stay one side for each image because it's easier to flip that way. Okay? And so what if I want to do something that's a little more complex? So here, I'm just going to kind of come over to this one. I'm going to think about drawing a tree. Okay. I'm going to do a couple trees. Just do a couple quick drawings of trees. Okay. So I'm not doing just one shape that's spanning across that whole side, but I'm thinking about some specific images that I can create to flip as well. And so I'm saying this not to say that these are the only things you can do with it, but saying this are some different things you can do if you'd like to. But I think once you start getting into creating those designs, it makes it easier to think about what are some of the other things that you can flip and would be a nice image too. So I'm going to go through and cut out my tree space here. And again, this is not a super fast process. I mean, we're going through it somewhat quickly, but something that's really nice about this is it does kind of invite us to slow down. And I know I'm repeating that a bit today, but I think there's something that's very beneficial about slowing down and just being focused on what's right in front of us. It's a mindfulness practice, right? And mindfulness, practicing mindfulness is so good for our brains and our body. There. So I'm going to put my centerpiece back here. We can see that my tree that I've cut it out, I'm going to take it and I'm flipping it to create my tree here. Okay. So it's giving me kind of a mirror image, right? So I'm going to do that with all my trees that I cut out here. And of course, feel free to follow along and do the cutouts that I'm doing, or think of other marks that you can do, you can build up. It doesn't have to be complex, but it can be. It doesn't have to be super simple, but it can be. And we're just kind of flipping those images. Once we cut them out, we're just kind of flipping them. So I'm going to do another tree here, cut out. I also think there's something that's really nice about exploring some of these wonderful traditions in other cultures. This one specifically has so much benefit to it because you are talking, not only talking about balance, but you're finding that, there we go. Finding that balance in your paper, finding that kind of peace in the making. So we can kind of flip. You can see my trees, my very basic trees here. But you can also cut out center shapes as well. So what I'm going to do, let me put this here. I'm going to go ahead and glue down my trees so I can talk about making things a little more complex. I also love this project because, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Any shape you do, when you flip it, it automatically makes it look really interesting. Right? So I'm going to, let's see. I'm going to cut a little moon shape out of my center here. So I have my trees, but I've also cut out this little moon shape that I can flip up here. I say that, show this to say that it doesn't have to be something that's flipping, like touching this edge, right? It can be something that's further in the piece, but you're still flipping it on this edge axis, right? So whether it's like one image or pieces, we're doing the trees, or you're cutting out that center piece, right? And flipping it, you're still flipping it across this axis. So you can make stuff that's really complex and interesting that way as well. That's one way to add to it. And so it gives it kind of a fun look. Right? And so there are a lot of things that you can do with this. You can get very complex. And if you have time to look up some examples of Notan cutouts, you'll see that people get very complex with their designs, very intricate details. And at the same time, there's some just really lovely pieces that are kind of like this, that are very basic, but can feel good to look at, right? Feel nice to look at. So on that handout that we shared in the chat, there's several different templates there that you can use as a starting off place. If you have some other designs that you want to try, definitely try those out and have some fun with it, right? So we've talked about doing a basic shape, adding some texture to it, doing like 2 cutouts, right? We've talked about repeating shapes like this, where it's a back and forth, right? And we've talked about things that are a little more complex, where you are still flipping on the axe, like the edge here, but it doesn't have to be touching the edge. So I definitely want to encourage some playing around with this too. And I'm going to do a little more. I'm going to finish off my side here. So I'm going to come over to this edge, and this is the edge that I'm going to be working on. And you don't have to use a pen or pencil to start your drawing, but it is a little helpful. It gives me a guideline, and I appreciate the guidelines. But what I'm going to do is just kind of create a little wave there. So it gives some depth. So I'm going to go through again and just kind of cut out my shapes. Again, just kind of take your time with your piece today. Maybe it's just today, it's just experimenting with some of the different shapes, cutting techniques. I'm just using a regular pair of scissors to kind of cut through my designs here. And I will say that it doesn't have to be complex to be pleasing to look at, right? I think sometimes the more basic shapes kind of feel soothing to look at. So know that it doesn't have to be super complex. That can also feel good too. So no discouragement there. I also like, there's something nice about kind of puzzle piecing everything together. So I'm gonna lay down my basic piece here. Okay. And so I've cut out my image here so I can flip it over to the edge. But I'm going to cut out this inside image as well. And again, I just want to encourage having fun with this, and kind of playing around with the different shapes and balance that you can get here. Again, if you're drawing something representational, a lot of times you want to just think about half that drawing. So again, if you're doing something like the heart, like I showed earlier, we're thinking about half of the heart size, right? Side. And it's so when you do flip it, you get that full heart image, right? But there's so many different ways to play around with this. And honestly, play, like play around with it, have some fun experimenting with it. And you may find something that we haven't talked about today that might be a lot of fun to do. It might be some fun to kind of cut out as well. All right. One thing I also want to say before we kind of move on is that it doesn't have to be perfect. I mentioned this in the beginning too, that, we have, I think a lot of times we have in our mind that we have to follow certain rules to make it a good piece. But you may have noticed my hands are really shaky and my edges aren't the smoothest. And I think we can judge our own artwork pretty harshly. We're our own harshest critic. But the truth is, when we take a moment, kind of step back and look at it as a whole, you don't see all those so-called flaws, right? And so when I step back and I look at my piece here, I'm not seeing those kind of torn images or those shaky lines, but I'm seeing this kind of fun interactive piece too. So I just want to offer that little bit of encouragement too. It doesn't have to be perfect, wabi-sabi, right? There's beauty in that imperfection. So for those shaky lines or torn edges, like what I have here, that's okay. It's part of the piece. And as long as it was kind of enjoyable to do, who cares if it's perfect, right? What is perfect? All right. So given my image here, I'm just kind of flipping it back and forth, right? I'm showing that balance, right? So whatever is over here in the negative space is over here in the positive space. Whatever was over here in the negative space is over here in that positive space. So there's that balance that comes, that back and forth. And so these are Notan cutouts. So I'm going to just take a moment and glue down this last piece here. Hopefully everybody is having some enjoying moments creating your own Notan cutout. But I'm just going to kind of place those pieces and place these down too. I like that it doesn't have to be glued down until the end. You may be like me and find that sometimes there are little accidents that happen along the way. So you can see that mine tore while I was putting glue on it. Secret, it doesn't matter if it tears because we're gluing it down. So if you find that yours tore a little bit like mine did, that's okay. So I'm going to show how to kind of troubleshoot that. There are no mistakes, right? So I'm taking my one piece and gluing that down. Okay. And then I can take my other piece and glue that down next to it. Go. And take my other piece here and glue that down too. Okay. So again, it doesn't have to be perfect. And if there's a tear in it, that's okay. The benefit of doing something with glue is that you can glue it down and no one sees it. Okay. So it doesn't even notice that look like there's been a tear or anything, right? And so this is a Notan cutout. It's something that can be really complex. It can be something that's very simplified and basic, but there's a lot of, I think, enjoyment that can come from the kind of repetition that you get to do with something like these Notan cutouts. So I'm going to pause right here. If there are any questions that are coming up, thank you. If there are any questions that are coming up about this process, I see we've got some
Yeah,
in
so
the chat.
we have 2 questions so far, but I do want to call out Samantha Ellis just put a picture of a Notan cutout art piece that she did a few months ago. I don't know if you can see it there, Ruth. But
Excellent. Let me scroll down.
it looks really great. But yeah, so while you're checking that out,
Yeah.
I will get these questions. Let's see.
Perfect.
So we have Deanna, and she's asking, can you double up the paper you're cutting from so that you can get multiple colors?
Yes. Oh, I like that. These are really great. Thank you, everyone, for your comments in the chat too. So the question is, can you double up paper to get different colors? Is that what?
Yeah.
Did I hear you first? Yeah. So yeah. So one of the things that I like about doing origami paper is that a lot of times you get 2 sides. So you get like a pattern on one side and then a solid color on the other. Or if you have like, I mean, I'm using my journal as a background for this piece, but you can do it on a black piece of paper or a different colored piece of paper too. So you can get some of that intricate play. It doesn't have to be that like white or paper colored background, normal paper color background. So you can use a different background color as well. I also really like doing this. I wish I had brought it with me today, but I really also enjoy taking artwork that I feel not the most connected to. I'm not going to say a failed art project because I don't think there's anything like nothing that's failed. Like I broke mine and I still put it back together and was like, I feel good about my piece. But I know sometimes when we're making art along the way, there may not be a piece that we're the most connected to or most happy with. I like taking those and turning them into something else. And so instead of using origami paper, I can use maybe this watercolor that didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. It makes a perfect paper to cut into to create these Notan drawings as well, because you get that wonderful watercolor look. Also, magazine pages are also something that I really like working with because you get like 2 different colors and patterns on a magazine page as well. So you can really play around with color and pattern that way also. And what I want to say, I know this is a lot of talking to answer that question, but I think experimentation and play is really important when it comes to making. And so if you're curious about a paper, or even if you have like a piece of pattern fabric, try it with it. It may not turn out well, it may turn out well, but it's kind of that exploration, that thinking about what else can I use? How will it turn out? That's so good for our brains, like that problem solving. So think about what other papers or materials that you can use to create these kind of cutouts. I was being very basic today with colored paper, but there's so many options, and play around with a couple different pieces of paper to see if you can do some more pattern play with that. Sorry, that was a lot of words.
No, it was perfect. Deanna's thanking you in the chat. She said she had some of those, and this was a fabulous class. So thank you.
Okay.
All right. We have Nancy who's asking, what kind of scissors are you using?
What kind of scissors
Yeah.
am I using? Is that the question? I get asked about these scissors all the time. So these are utility scissors that I got from a kitchen supply store. And so it's a really nice pair of scissors. It's called Westcott is the brand. I don't know if I've heard of them before, but I love this pair of scissors. And you can see it's got like other things that go with it, but it's just a really sturdy pair of scissors. But Westcott is the brand. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of them before, but it's utility scissors that are used in kitchens for
Awesome.
art tools.
I'm not seeing any other questions. There were a few folks asking about the recording for this session as well as the first three. So just want to pause to say they were all recorded and will all be posted to our YouTube channel. If you have not subscribed, you can find the link to subscribe to our YouTube channel in the chat. But I'm not seeing any other questions if you wanted to keep going, or we could allow folks to raise their hands.
I actually, if it's okay, I would love to see what other people are working on. So maybe if you've glued down things, if you haven't glued down, it's totally okay because I know it's in pieces. But if you've glued down some things and you have a moment to just kind of lift up your artwork, I would love to see some of the patterns that everyone came up with. If we want a moment of little sharing. I'm gonna remove the spotlight so I can see. These look great. I love the leaves. Nice. Oh, and the magazine pages too. These are good. I love the backgrounds too. Oh, these are, oh, stop. I love the hand that's collaged in there. That looks so great. So good, everyone. I love the patterns that everyone's coming up with. These look really good. Oh, I like the detail. You guys are pros now. This looks this looks great. You could keep going forever now. I love how these images are turning out. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your creativity with us today. If there are other questions, definitely feel free to ask, put in the chat or that raise your hand icon. I think the thing I would love to leave everybody with, I know this is our last session together, but what I want to encourage is to kind of find more, do more. If there's something that you feel connected to, that you enjoyed in this series, keep doing it. Experiment, try things out, because there's a lot of fun and a lot of like soothing feelings I think we get from this kind of creative practice. And everything we've done in this series so far, there's been a heavy focus on process. And like I said before, that process I think is the most important, because that's where those benefits come in. And who cares if it's not the most like tightly cut, smoothest image? If it felt good to make it, that's a success. I always joke about how I think art making is kind of anticlimactic because it's so enjoyable to do. And then you get to the end and you're like, well, okay, there's that. And then you want to do it again because it felt good to do. And so things that feel good to do, that's a self-care thing. And that's so important in our world when there's a lot of things that are outside of our control. Doing things like this can feel grounding and soothing. So if you do have those moments where you do feel stressed or anxious, maybe try sitting down with your journal and trying some of these processes that we've gone through in this series, or try out other things as well.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything else in the chat here. Yeah, go ahead.
And thank you, everyone. Again, I know I've said it a couple times, but this is always like doing these art journaling groups are always so much fun because it's just like making in a space with others. And so you've made this time special for me. So thank you for being here and sharing your time and your creativity and your art making. It's definitely appreciated. So thank you so much.
And thank you, Ruth. And you can look at the chat and see everyone's very appreciative of today and the entire series. It's just been wonderful. So it's just been a pleasure having you. All right. Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Ruth.